Welcome along to the second attempt at the Star Trek Next Generation
Part two of part two.
Part 2 podcast. Yeah, we've had a little bit of a technical hiccup here. Sound wasn't actually recording on the sound recorder, and then the camera died halfway through. But that also was not recording sound, which is a bit, it's a little bit important for a podcast. is to have sound.
Are you able to, just as a matter of fact, cut and start again? You got chocolate there. Like,
Do it. We've been having a bit of have some chocolate. Oh, we got chocolate. Nobody could see it.
Actually, sorry, Nutella. It's not chocolate. It's Nutella.
I'm too far away from the camera.
That's all right.
You wouldn't have seen that. It's it's the scar down my face. No. The sound isn't quite amazing, but I rigged it up in such a way that it's not quite amazing, and I have all this kit here. And anyway, that's the thing. Welcome to the USS Cuchulain-Cast, episode 3. 30th anniversary edition, or 30th anniversary of the Star Trek Next Generation edition episode. If those words make sense. We've actually been talking for about 45 minutes on this already, and I don't think any of it's usable. So we'll probably recant stuff that we've just been talking about.
Yeah.
So Alan, you started off the last time with a wonderful question. What was it?
It was... What's gone? What was it?
Yeah, but it was a wonderful question.
I think it was a great question. It started us all off on
Was it asking kind of what introduced you, how you first became aware
that was it,
of the existence of the Next Generation?
That's it. I'm going to let Frank field this while I fix some audio problems.
How did I find it?
How did it enter your
my consciousness?
Kind of consciousness. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've being a sci-fi fan for years, like following Star Trek and Space 1999 and Blake 7 and all of those, and reading it from when I was young, the likes of E. Doc Smith and Asimov and all that kind of stuff. I was already into sci-fi, but before TNG came along, there wasn't an awful lot of new sci-fi, so it was all repeats of those shows I just mentioned there. But somewhere along the line, the advertisements came out, like there was this new Star Trek show going to start airing. It was in 87.
87,
and,
yeah.
It
28th of September.
28th of September, actually, yeah.
Which
is
quite soon.
But yeah, and then the ads, it came out in some papers and all of that. Like this new crew was going to, start a new show and all the rest of it. Like, and there were some people who were a bit peeved at that. I was just intrigued. I said, finally something new, and then it started and I was in love with it straight away, because it was new. It hadn't been anything new sci-fi wise for quite some time, really, and this was the first. It was great, and that's I just kept going, and from there, everything that came after TNG on TV, we can thank TNG for it.
I think we touched on that the last time and the last podcast as well. Is that there's people like myself, or one of the active members on the Cuchulain Facebook page, Neil Stringer, not too enamored with all these changes in Discovery, and how dare you change Star Trek, and not going back on that, but in 1986 and 87 when Paramount announced this Star Trek The Next Generation, people were like, you can't replace Kirk, Spock and McCoy. That's not unheard of. It's not Star Trek, and then they saw the new look, and they changed the red and gold had swapped around. They'd figured out the psychology that red is a commanding color. It's why you always see an American president wearing red when he's something important to say. And blue is a subdued color, so that stayed with science. But security became gold.
Yeah.
So there was these. That was a massive change. I suppose that'd be a change akin to us complaining about the look of the technology, or the new Klingon look.
I think people knew that Gene Roddenberry was behind it, so there was a kind of this could work because the guy who created it is there.
Yeah,
he's missing now.
He
wasn't there for DS9 and Voyager and stuff like that. So
Enterprise and now Discovery.
Yeah, you really didn't know what they were going to do or where they were going to go with these things, But having Gene Roddenberry there kind of allayed a lot of fears. People, you have your staunch fans who, nothing is ever going to replace the original series.
Yeah.
But like myself and Frank were talking during the break, and I was saying that I watched when I was growing up, I watched the original series and I enjoyed it, but there were a bunch of people that worked together on a ship and they were all friends. But when you watch Next Generation, they had more of a feel of family to it.
Yes, yeah.
And you became a part of that family, so they mattered more.
There was. I remember with all, because the amount of unofficial guides, unofficial books that so many different writers have written over the last 30 years since the Next Generation started, and of course the last 50 years when Star Trek started. But the psychology of the Next Generation, a lot of them made it akin to, Picard as the dad, Riker's the uncle or the big brother, and then you've got, Beverly's the mum, and you got to the American audience, they wouldn't have had something like that, I don't think, since the Waltons. Yeah,
the TOS had a kind of limited version of it where Spock was the intellect and McCoy was the heart and Kirk was the action or whatever, but it wasn't as rounded as you got with the Next Generation.
Of course, the Next Generation got a hell of a lot longer to explore.
Yeah, it had more time to establish itself.
100 more episodes than.
And like we say, kind of for the first 2 seasons, it didn't know where to go or what it was. It was a kind of a lot of times rehashing TOS, and then in season 3, it's found its feet.
Yeah, well, the Naked Time, the Naked Now,
and I kind of feel like part of the reason for that is that Gene Roddenberry had taken a back foot on it at that stage. Yeah. So I mean, I think he was there at the beginning. It mightn't have got started in the first place if he hadn't been there at the beginning of it. But I think if he had stayed, it wouldn't have lasted as long.
Right.
Because
he was a harsh personality.
Yeah, but I mean, he had his particular viewpoint, and a lot of people talk about the Roddenberry rule or whatever it is, but he brought the show to fruition, and he got it on the air, which was great. But the first 2 seasons are the weakest 2 seasons of TNG. Yeah. And I think as he took a step back, and Rick Berman came in and said, "Well, we need to modernize this. And make it a show for those of us who were growing up in the 80s watching this for the first time." Yeah. And everybody will tell you, I mean, from season 3 onwards, this is where TNG really found its footing.
That's what I was getting at in the first half of this podcast was
that we haven't got.
It was very straitjacketed. The first 2 seasons, it was trying to emulate TOS, and it needed to find
its own niche,
itself. It needed to be its own character. And I think once they found that, then it started to flow. They took in unsolicited stories from fans and stuff, and these were people who wanted to write for Star Trek specifically. So they would submit stories, and
they'd had so many ideas themselves from watching in the 60s. Now they have an opportunity. This from the get-go syndicated show. And at the time, syndication was 100 episodes. Now it's only 88. But 24 to 26 episodes a season. 4 seasons gets you syndication back then, and you get to sell your show as a package deal. But Next Generation was sold straight into syndication. It went out and it went out on basic cable, so everyone got to see it. It was one of the most. Its success could be attributed to ease of access. So many people got to see it, but also the sense of family. That you got from the show. It was one of the most syndicated shows for its time, wasn't it? It was like.
When you say how many episodes were syndicated, are you do you count the banned episode?
Well,
it was only banned in the UK.
It was only banned in the UK. And when you talk about syndication is not a thing that happens in the UK. I don't know. I can't talk about foreign language countries like France or Germany or anybody else like that, because obviously Star Trek's huge in Germany. They get FedCon, and they're nearly 30 years doing that themselves. The syndication is an American thing because you've got pay-per-view, then you've got network, then you've got cable. Don't particularly know all the differences there because I didn't grow up there, but syndication gets it out on it's a wider distribution. But generally, a network makes a show, a production company makes a show, and it's paid for by a network, and they will get early viewing and the first viewing and the second viewing rights and so forth and so on. But then once you make 100 episodes, you're eligible to sell a syndication package.
Yeah.
And like the example I gave in the previous podcast we don't have was that for many years MacGyver went on for 7 seasons and TV movies. But when you see MacGyver aired on the on the TV, generally you only get to see the first 4 seasons, and then the station stops, because that was the syndicated package. That's what they probably bought as a package deal, and didn't buy the next 3 seasons. So you rarely get to see them. So even if there's somebody still airing MacGyver, but I know when it was in the noughties, that MacGyver was still on the air for Bravo or something like that, and they only ever aired season 1 to 4, and that was the 100 episodes. So Next Generation didn't have to achieve 100 episodes. It was straight out from Encounter at Farpoint, brand new show in the cable realm.
Was it always that case? Like, I mean, the original Star Trek didn't do well in its original run.
No.
It was in syndication that it found most of its fan base, and it has 79 episodes. So
79 episodes, but that was made in the 60s, and it was a finished show.
Yeah.
So when exactly that magic number of 100 came about, there's a wonderful book called The Making of Star Trek: The Next Generation, which is actually one of the best behind the scenes of Hollywood and Paramount, how things run, how the Paramount system runs. It's one of the best books I've read on that particular subject. Not because it was Star Trek, but because of the insight it gives you. Because they were talking about the contracts that the actors signed, their residuals, and for someone like me who works in television, that's all very, very interesting, because that's not something that you get here in the Republic of Ireland. You don't get residuals. That was taken away from us a long time ago by Screen Producers Ireland. So seeing how the actors got paid, because we touched on so many things and we're going to have to repeat them now, and they're all kind of muddled up, but we spoke about actors. They get a job and they're just so delighted to have a job, and you're on this show as, oh my god, I've got so many episodes. And like we spoke about Michael Dorn. He came in, and when he first came in, he came in makeup. Nobody knew what he really looked like. He hadn't been to any cast meet and greets. He was a last minute addition, and he was he'd come in hours early and leave hours late. So for a long time, nobody knew what Michael actually really looked like outside of Wharf. And he'd say hello to someone in the parking lot, and they wouldn't know who he was. Yeah. Things like, but Michael didn't. He wouldn't rock the boat. He's a nice man. He's a lovely person. And even when he was having makeup problems, his makeup was causing him rashes. The adhesive on his skin, his face was becoming very red. And it was only because of the relationship he developed with Marina Sirtis, and their friendship, and how loud she is, how the type of person that she is in real life. I think in Las Vegas, the 30th anniversary crew, the cast panel, she said, they never let me be me. For some reason, I was I wasn't allowed to put any parts of me into Deanna Troi, and that's because she's very, very different. She's a very boisterous person. Yeah. She's an extrovert. She's very much an extrovert, and that's why she's good at acting, obviously. Sorry, just to finish my point, it was her going to Michael Westmore, and her going to the producers going, Michael is uncomfortable, Michael's having a problem, and that's where Worf's makeup started to change, was because Michael was so nice. He was an actor, he had a job. I'm not going to rock that boat,
And I think one of the reasons he would have been taking that attitude is that particularly in the first season, he was peripheral, he was Tasha Yar was the security officer. He was kind of like just there on the side. I think let's have a Klingon on board. That might be interesting, but he wasn't an important character at that point in time. And so I'm sure at that stage he was thinking, I will do whatever I have to do to keep this job, you know what I mean? Yeah. So he wouldn't have, you know what I mean? So he was kind of lucky that Marina was there to say, that guy's suffering. Will he do something about that,
Yeah, exactly.
But then eventually, obviously Tasha Yar disappeared, and he became a more important character as he became chief security officer, and his role really grew.
How did you feel about Denise Crosby walking away?
I don't think we got to see enough of her to really feel anything about it. Like, you know what I mean? You know, she was it like halfway through the first season.
It was episode 18, I think.
Skinny People. So just by on halfway there. But yeah, I mean, I think she was an interesting character. I actually enjoyed her more when she came back. You know, for Yesterday's Enterprise and the Redemption.
Do you think she regretted walking away though, and that's why she was happy enough to come back?
I would think so. Like, I mean, you know, I think at that stage they probably didn't feel they'd get a second season, you know.
Well,
Patrick Stewart didn't even unpack. That's the thing. Like, you know, so.
Yeah, well, Patrick Stewart, he didn't unpack. I think Denise was. A lot of actors get to a point, and they make these decisions. Brent, I believe, from watching some of the behind the scenes stuff, wanted a film career, and back in the 80s, you know, you became one or the other. There wasn't the crossover that we have nowadays, where we, you know, have film actors and they'll go and do a TV series or a Netflix one-off series and small productions, and they'll be actors in a show that they like. You do the big screen or you do the small screen. There was that separation in Hollywood, and Brent wanted to be a film actor, but he, you know, actors, you get so much, and then you kind of go, well, I need to pay the rent. Yeah. So he took that and ran with that. So Denise, the comparison I'm going to say here is I can only guess, but she probably didn't want to be attached to a series because she wanted to be able to be free to go and do projects that enticed her. Didn't want to get locked down. I know that for Deep Space Nine, Kieran Reese was actually originally written to be Ro Laren.
Yeah,
that's right.
And Michelle Forbes turned it down because she didn't want to be contracted into a long running show. And Star Trek was successful at the time, and Deep Space Nine could possibly have run 7 years. So she didn't want that. She wanted to be able to go to another project and what projects interested her. So that's where Nana Visitor obviously got her chance to play Kieran Reese. But the first script of Emissary, I believe, was Ro Laren came in to run Deep Space Nine as first episode.
Well, I think for TNG, you know, the result of that was the best result, you know, because I'm not sure where they could have gone with the Tasha Yar character after any length of time, but certainly Worf became a character that they were able to develop and really create something out of, like, you know, and then develop the Klingon storyline and into the House of Moog and all of that background. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think, you know, they might have had some interesting storylines for Tasha, but I don't think it would have matched what they were able to do with Worf further down the line. Like,
right.
I think Worf's character became more refined based on his hairstyle at the time. He had so many changes of hair.
It was slicked back, and then he had a bob, and then it was like, no, the bob's ridiculous. Let's give him a ponytail.
He certainly kept that blue barber busy, all right, didn't he?
Mr. Mott,
Mr. Mott, the barber, the Starship Gossip.
There you go.
You know,
But that was one of the good things about Next Generation, was these little peripheral characters they would throw in from time to time.
Yeah.
You know, Mr. Mott and
it was something that Deep Space Nine.
Goldberg.
Well, Guinan came in season 2. She wanted to come in.
Yeah,
she did.
She was like because she was a big fan of Nichelle Nichols in the 60s, and oh my god, and she run. You know, there's this. You'll see videos. I'm sure if you Google it or YouTube it. You know, Whoopi talking about running into her mum and telling her there's a black woman doing a job on a spaceship, and you know she's in charge. She's in charge of a whole section, communication section. You know, and she was she didn't believe this, and became a big Trekkie because of that, and then. Who was she friends with? She was friends with somebody who was basically going, put a word in, I want to work on this show.
Yeah, who was she friends with?
I can't remember, but I think she remember reading that, you know, she pretty much saved the show as well, like, you know, because it was struggling, and all of a sudden, because she was a big movie star at that stage,
she was,
you know, there's this big movie star that wants a recurring character role on this show, like, you know, I mean, there was like, you do? Please come in, we'll find something for you. You know?
She was one of the first to kind of step down to off the big screen to come into a TV series, which was unheard of at the time.
Oh, it was.
Nobody did that.
I mean, you even had those, you know, those random ensigns that would appear at the con. You know, Ensign McKnight and Ensign Rager and
Ensign Sarah Rager, you know, Ensign Gates,
and these were like, you know, you came to know them, and you could imagine then they had background stories and stuff like that, because that's what Next Generation did. It was,
Yeah.
you know, you had these people around the
Did
core.
those actresses ever do conventions?
I don't think so.
You know,
I don't think I've ever heard of one of them.
yeah, I've never seen those guys kind of turn up at an event. I wonder where they, you know, what their stint is, because you'd see, like, and they continued on, right? You'd see them strangely. These characters in the background got transferred. The extras on Next Generation, they're always there. Like that nurse. I used to know the character names because in the Star Trek,
Ogawa, is it?
Well, no, there was Ensign Ogawa. Nurse Ogawa, and she did an event last year with Gates. No, she was a speaking role. I'm talking about the guys who just turn up and hand over hyperspray, or are always at the science consoles at the back of the bridge, or you know, always down with Geordie wandering around holding.
Susie Plaxton did a small stint, didn't she? As a Vulcan in sickbay.
Right.
Wasn't it? She was a Vulcan doctor.
It was Dr. Solar.
Dr. Solar,
I thought that was that not like Judy Caitlin Brown? No, or
I think it was Susie Plaxton, wasn't it? Who had played Kaylar.
Kaylar, sorry, that's the actress I'm thinking about. I get her mixed up with Judy Caitlin Brown a lot. Don't ask me why. But yeah, she played Dr. Solar. She played Solar. She played Kaylar.
I can't remember when she came into it.
She was also Q in Voyager.
That's right.
Q's wife.
She was Q's wife,
girlfriend, mother of Q.
Yes.
So yeah, she those 3 roles in Star Trek.
And there was that famous painting in sickbay, wasn't it? Enterprise flying over a load of entrails.
What?
I'm gonna have to look at the Blu-ray. Check that out.
What are you talking about? Explain this one to me.
Just outside Dr. Crusher's office, there's a huge painting on the wall.
Right.
And it's the Enterprise, and it's kind of very pastely. It's the Enterprise D flying out. But when you look closely, and I think it's in the Art of Star Trek books, they're actually like livers and kidneys.
You're kidding.
They're organs and entrails. And you have the Enterprise D.
30 years and we're only
hang on a second. We're going to have to pause this whole podcast and get that disc right now. Stick it in the computer. We're
Google it on your phone.
Google it on your
phone. Quicker.
Really?
Honest to God, they're outside Dr. Crusher's office.
I'm gonna say Alan's gonna put a link, a Google link in the podcast in the comments. That'll be in the comments. That is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's definitely in the Art of Star Trek book. And,
okay, I think I have that book at home somewhere.
The Next Generation one with the black cover. I think it's in there as well.
Oh, maybe I think
the ongoing mission or something.
You might have one over on me on that one. I have many art books, but I don't think I have that one. I don't have room for any more.
Well, I might have 2 of them, so you can have one.
You heard it here first, folks. That's for me.
I think it's Q.
Q, yeah.
He's messing about us.
This wild idea of recording down in Wicklow is...
Actually, no, in the previous podcasts we had talked about a few characters and we hadn't actually mentioned Q. Yeah. You know, anyone think like he is probably one of the great recurring characters in any show? Like,
he's one of the great villains.
He's one of the...
Definitely.
He definitely is, yeah.
And Star Trek... The Next Generation did introduce some good villains, you know, the Borg, Q, you know, the Cardassians. They came in.
Well, they ran on, and of course the Cardassians. Actually, I'm going to just fix something here. Continue talking.
Yeah. But I was just going to say it's great that with TNG, you know, talking about 30 years and all the rest of it, that Q kind of bookended.
Yeah.
Because he's there in the pilot and he's there in the finale, you know.
Yeah, that was a pretty great way.
All good things, you know, the way they tied in everything that went before, everything that's going on now, and everything just might go on in the future in that particular episode, and Q being at the heart of that. I love it. For me, it's still the best of all the Trek finales, like, you know.
But you always knew when Q turned up in an episode, it was going to be fun.
It was going to be fun.
Like the episode.
Well, that's what John Delancey really took that and ran.
He owned that.
He owned that. He because he was the tag in storyline. Encounter at Farpoint was all about the station when it was originally written, and then the network said, "No, you need to put something else in there," and they you need to put something else in there to bring the story to a different place. And Gene added in this omnipotent being character to extend out Encounter at Farpoint. And it ended up being the more successful of the two story beats. I just put this picture in because just before the last break in technology, we were actually talking about design on Star Trek. This image here we have in front of us. I've had this for I've had this for nearly 25 years. Well, maybe not 20 years at least. It came with the original AMT Ertl Enterprise D model kit, which I still have at home. I painted it one way when I was a teenager, and then I think I was 23, 24. I took it out of a box or off the shelf, dusted it off, and went, oh, I can do so much better now. My modeling skills have increased. The original color of the Enterprise D was, inverted commas, duck egg blue.
Yeah.
And but it never came across like that, especially when I was watching on TV. I always thought it was silver.
Yeah.
It just looked silver. So my model of the Enterprise D, I had a base coat of silver, and it's actually different tones of silver, metallic colors.
Same with me now. When I first built my Enterprise D, I went with pale grey, like a kind of battleship
colours.
And of course, completely off base. It was colour altogether.
But it was the great design of Andy Probert. Yeah, we're still having technical hiccups, so there'll be all sorts of flashes in this, edits
I think,
and picture drop.
It all depended on the contrast and settings on your TV, how you were going to view the ship, because I think no two people saw it the same.
It's all the same way. You're calling, you pop it, push that push button knob where the tray of the colours came out, or you pull the panel away and you fix that to make it to get your colour balance correct and stuff.
The wonderful CRT TV.
The cathode ray tube. But Andrew Probert designed this ship. Was you saying that the people in a lot of people still hate Andrew Probert's designs?
The Enterprise D does get a lot of hate, especially if you look at some YouTube videos where people discuss it. They sort of complain that it's too big, it's too ungainly. It was a deep space explorer that never seemed to go into deep space because they were always able to get back to Earth at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
And that the constant breakdowns. I mean, these are things that are written for a story.
Yeah,
so
well, you have to.
It's not that the ship actually would break down.
You have to dramatize
this. Very
this.
interesting, because I wasn't really aware that there was that much hate towards the Enterprise D.
Neither did I, really.
I mean,
with Discovery coming up now and the talk about how a lot of people don't like the design of that ship. You being one of them, yeah. But I find it an interesting parallel because you know what I mean. We've got, a show that came out in the 80s. I remember coming out, and I remember seeing the newspaper ads for it, and also the articles where Trekkies were going, "You can't do this. It doesn't have Kirk, and it doesn't have Spock, and it doesn't have McCoy." And they were really hating on the show. And then look what it turned out to be. But now. Apparently there's still a lot of people out there who don't like the Enterprise. I love the Enterprise D, by the way. I think it's
my favourite starship. It's my
it's
favourite.
Fantastic. It's a fantastic design.
Yeah.
And while I'm not enamoured by Discovery, I don't hate it as much as you guys do. But I find it an interesting parallel there. Here we're kind of there again, where people are hating on the ship.
Yeah, we touched on that before. Exactly.
And it's not even so much that I actually hate Discovery. I would like to tweak.
Yes.
There's certain things.
I want to see it. We've said this. I think we've said this time and time again. I really am looking forward to Discovery.
Oh yeah, I mean we discussed that in a Discovery cast, but I'm just saying it's an interesting parallel.
It is.
Yes.
It is similar. Yeah.
Talking about
if you look
30
at,
years after.
I was so I was a kid when all the start. When was it announced? 85 or 86?
86.
Was it announced in 86? Yeah. So I was the start of 86. I was 5.
Yeah.
So this is all over my head. This is all stuff that I would only have read about now or seen videos of. But the whole animosity towards it, I would never have experienced talking to people at all.
I never experienced that myself.
Or seen in a magazine.
Yeah. I'm just a little bit older than you guys, unfortunately. So.
My first exposure to Next Generation stuff was stuff like Starlog and
but that
general sci-fi magazines. And then
that was the 90s, right?
That was it. No, it'd be 80s.
Was it? Okay, sorry. 90s for me.
And I was telling Frank earlier, the first real exposure I had to Next Generation was I found a magazine in a shop, and I think it was Look In magazine or something like that. But they'd done a Star Trek Next Generation special, which I hadn't seen on screen yet.
Right.
So I grabbed this magazine, and on the cover there was a free salmon pink sew-on.
Okay.
Patch, right, which featured the movie.
Interesting color.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
It didn't match anything.
It's not the wide one from the Monster Maroon badge? No.
No. It had the delta with the circle.
The circle. Okay, from the slow motion picture one.
Yeah. But I don't know what the link was. Next Generation and pink. But I had to have
a cheap material from which to print this.
Hey, it was the 80s. Pink was a
going
going
to the
colour
school
at the
bag as
time.
quickly as I could get it.
Star Trek Miami Vice crossover.
Well, it was.